All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us to have this talk on 2021 design trends. My name is Eric Braun. Again, thank you for joining us. Beautiful Thursday morning. We don't have too many of these left, so hopefully you can get out and enjoy it. Looks like it's going to be a nice weekend. We've got some more people joining in, so I'm just going to take a moment and give a minute while I set up this screen share here. Again, my name is Eric Braun. I'm Director of Design at our Landscape Division, located up in North Chicago. And what we're going to talk about today is just all various up and coming trends or current trends and things that are popular in the landscape realm. So these are things that we are seeing either in the industry or things that are we're seeing from some of our vendors and subcontractors. So I'm going to go ahead and get my screen share set up here. Just bear with me for one moment. All right. All right, so today with our time together, what we're going to cover is, like I mentioned, current and upcoming trends. These are going to include, things such as, different plants that are, very popular nowadays, also some recommended uses, and also a lot of different site features and things that you'll see out and about throughout the properties and just ideas possibly for your landscape or outdoor space. We'll also kind of touch on the different uses of these various, pieces and strategies for their use. A few things we'll need to have some important considerations, so I'll briefly touch on some of those, and of course lots of photos and examples to go along with each topic to kind of see how they're used and what to expect. And as we go along, feel free, please type questions in the comment box. There's also a Q&A box. If you can type the questions in the comment box, that would be great, just so other people can see them. The Q&A box is only visible by me, but either way, I'll check them both. And once we're done with the presentation, I'll be sure to go through all those kind of one by one. And so feel free to stick around if you ask a question, and I'll get to it. So here's what we're going to talk about today. So, what's trendy right now? So we're going to touch on some recent developments in outdoor technology and add-ons to your outdoor spaces. Of course, just like any other industry, there's a lot going on right now, technology related. We'll touch on using gravel as hardscapes, becoming more and more popular. Fire pits and fireplaces, of course, it being fall right now, trying to extend the outdoor season, and just get the most out of your space, especially with everyone being cooped up at home. That's more and more important nowadays. Ornamental grasses and plant communities, from a landscape and planting design side of things, really popular right now. And I want to highlight some of the approaches for that, and also some great plant material to possibly integrate in your space. And then just odds and ends. There's a lot always going on in this industry, in any design field. So there's a couple of things I just also wanted to at least touch on and mention that I felt couldn't do without. So we'll touch on those as well. So first off, I want to talk about outdoor tech. Like I mentioned, sorry, I'm going to start my stopwatch here, make sure I don't go too long. Just like any industry, technology, the advent of either, apps or, computer technology, and everything is changing the game. So I wanted to touch on a few things. First off, heating options. So, we're into fall. So what you want to do is, obviously you want to be comfortable outside. A lot of us are, stuck at home, spending even more time at home than we usually would. And so you want to be comfortable. So what I wanted to show is a couple newer options. Some have been around for a while, but also some are new for options for heating outdoors. So bottom left, you can see that's a beautiful kind of cabana covered outdoor space, but what they have mounted up there in the corners or along the sides are these infrared heaters. So if you have an area, and you've probably been, outside either hotels or outdoor spaces where you felt, or even public transportation stops sometimes where they have these infrared heaters. Those do a great job creating radiant heat to make a space more comfortable. One thing just wanted to note with those, typically those are electrical with line voltage. So there's electrical line running out to those types of systems. But then on the right, wanted to mention some portable systems as well. On the right, there's a very interesting one. Is actually a little tiny bistro table, and emits heat out of the base. Keeps your bottom half and your legs warm, and then of course heat rises. So as it kind of comes out, it can kind of heat your upper body as well. And then bottom right, you can see those portable stand heaters that can be utilized in an outdoor patio space. You'll see them a lot at restaurants and things like that. But nowadays, these are the types of things that you can really be integrating at your home and out on decks, out on patios, and things like that. Typically, anything where there's a flame is going to be propane, operated. So there's different size propane tanks. Some of these are kind of hidden in the base. Others you're kind of screw on the top, and you can kind of light those and hopefully stay warm at night, stay warm during the fall or even early spring, coming to early 2021. And then we move on to, I wanted to mention landscape lighting, specifically LED lighting, because over the last 5 years or so, the LED technology has really changed the game in landscape lighting and just outdoor lighting in general, and even indoor lighting for that matter. The days of line voltage with incandescent lighting are kind of getting to be behind us, and LED is now the industry standard. Any of our outdoor lighting contractors and things like that really are using LEDs as the default, and now they can create both kind of that nice warm yellow orange light, orangey light, versus back in the day, the earlier versions of LEDs used to be a really bright white, almost bluish light, which I know turned some people off from that. But they've remedied that, so now you can get both warm and cool light. And there's several reasons why LED is just better in general, and a couple of them are just lower maintenance, installation, and operation costs. Obviously, cost is a big factor always. Once you get these systems in, they may be a little bit more expensive for the actual fixture, but the installation is super easy. You don't need a 120 volt line in conduit. With line voltage like you have in your house, it's just a low voltage line that can be buried or run and just covered by mulch. Also, that means much safer. You're operating with a low voltage line, and these fixtures will run on anywhere from 5 to 8 watts. And then up top right, we've got just an example of one of the bullet up light, and then a transformer that would be mounted on the house near an actual line voltage outlet, and then the lines would run from this transformer out into the landscape. So the LEDs can be used for accent lighting on the home. Here's a good example down below where you've got kind of various types of lighting and strategies. You've got architectural lighting, lighting up the facade of the home. You've got uplight here, in the landscape, uplighting the beautiful canopy tree here. Some smaller lights, along the shrub line. So you can do pathway lights, uplights, all of these things. And one thing that's even newer that we just kind of learned about this year was some of these fixtures from these companies are actually having adjustable spreads. So as you're starting with, let's say, a small tree, you could have the angle of the beam be much smaller. And then as the tree grows, and you're going to need a wider beam spread, there's just a little dial on the side that'll basically open up that angle. So really cool, because then you don't need to be moving fixtures. You don't need to be swapping out for new fixtures as things grow. So that's another really cool technology that's up and coming. So yeah, just LED in general, safer for a lot of reasons. Also, much more economical. Like I mentioned, the wattage, the power usage is so much lower nowadays than a typical incandescent fixture. You can run these systems, and the cost from a power standpoint is really minimal. So lots of exciting stuff there. And then just a couple other options. This is just a nice little fancy pathway light. Also with the fixtures themselves, you can have a very interesting architectural type fixtures to go with the overall style of the landscape or your home. So there's different models to choose from there. On the bottom left, I wanted to show some integrated lighting in some decking. So that's another thing. These LED bulbs are so small and the wiring is so small that it really has allowed these industries to put them in places where you couldn't really have lighting before, or it was extremely difficult. They could be integrated into the steps like this. You can see them also in these post caps, even in seat walls and things like that, where it's a lot easier to get these little fixtures in. And one thing I did want to touch on from a landscape lighting standpoint is a lighting strategy called moonlighting. This is a strategy where you have fixtures mounted up in canopy trees, and it creates an effect of the way that your outdoors would look on, let's say, a full moon night. So very soft lighting creates very interesting shadows, and also a nice little safety feature. You definitely do want to hire someone, hire a professional, or we work with professionals, because the placement of the fixtures is key, because you want them to create that soft moonbeam effect but not be able to see the fixture. So you're going to want to have someone who knows what they're doing in the placement of the fixtures themselves. But that's becoming more and more popular. It's something that we're seeing in the industry, and also something that we're recommending or proposing in more designs moving forward. So then bistro lighting. So I had to touch on this. Bistro lighting, super trendy right now. Also, we're seeing proposing this on a lot of outdoor spaces, a lot of designs. We got these really cool bistro lights, typically like a rounded bulb strung over patio spaces. Really creates just a nice soft light, and just a bistro-like feel. Also creates a slight sense of enclosure. You can see on the right here of what that would feel like if you're sitting down here. It's almost as if there's a informal roof over your head, but you're still able to see through it. So it just creates a little bit of a sense of enclosure, and also creates a really intimate space. Seeing lots of requests for this, lots of opportunities to add this on to existing outdoor spaces. If you already have a patio or already have a deck, this is something that can be added on to it to make just take it up to that next level of an outdoor space. One thing I also wanted to mention is the posts or the anchoring. That's one thing to think about is, if you're going to string these across, how are you going to do that? You're going to do a radial pattern, kind of like this bottom left, where it looks like they're all mounted, near this one corner, and kind of have them flared out. Whereas on the right here, they're kind of strung back and forth in a zigzag pattern. But you're going to need to have places to mount these too. So sometimes we'll have to add posts off the patio areas, and we'll often try to hide those a little bit with plantings and make them more discreet. And then you can always anchor to the home, use some eye hooks and things, or eye screws and things like that. But just something to think about if you're thinking about bistro lighting is, okay, where are we going to hang these? What kind of look do we want? And kind of go from there. And we can also help you with some of those ideas. Did want to mention on this end, a lot of these are still actually incandescent light bulbs, but the LED technology is finding its way into this bistro lighting field as well. So more to come on that. Then apps and Bluetooth and app compatibility. Just like everything else, every other part of our lives, Bluetooth and app compatibility is something that's finding its way into the outdoor spaces as well. So a couple of the main spots that we see this are in irrigation. lighting, and then of course audio visual. So if you have an irrigation system, nowadays a lot of times they will have Bluetooth and app compatibility. So you can be, out of town and, still be controlling your irrigation system through an app on your phone. They also can be tied to local weather systems and software as well. So they can kind of automatically adjust, or you can, keep an eye on things and adjust them as necessary. One of the things that's great with this as well is if we have maintenance properties where there are irrigation systems, our maintenance account managers can have the app on their phone connected to the different homes to adjust the irrigation as necessary if we can't access the box, if it's in in the garage or something like that and the homeowner's out of town. So interesting things there. It is a newer technology, so there's still a few bugs, depending. Some of them are connected to the Wi-Fi, so if you get if you're home and get kind of real far away, sometimes there's some issues there. But it is a kind of a technology that's on the forefront and being developed, and we're starting to see more and more. And then on the bottom right is just another example of a landscape lighting app that is out there on the market. So same thing, you can control, sitting in your home, control your landscape lights and your outdoor lighting system, or security lights if you're out of town, things like that. Then top left was just an interesting look that I found for outdoor speakers. It's got basically look almost like little lanterns. It can have those on a seat wall or in a corner of a patio space or something, or even hanging, and they have a little light, looks like a lantern, but they're also speakers. And of course, any of these, whether it be a speaker or a TV, nowadays you can connect to your phone and utilize those in your outdoor space. So really cool stuff in that realm. Technology is a wonderful thing. Then gravel. I wanted to touch on gravel. Typically when we think of patio spaces, or what we'll typically call hardscape, which is anything like that's, a walkway, a patio, a driveway, sidewalks, those are all hardscapes. Gravel is an option that's becoming more and more popular. And there's a few great things that gravel gives you. It can be utilized in a modern or a natural style. These examples here on the screen are utilizing gravel in a more of a modern or contemporary style. You can see very clean lines, very rectilinear. Some of them are using gravel as the main infill with a solid border. Others are the opposite. We have a solid infill and then gravel as a border. This is a recent install that we did. You can see pretty fresh, and then now of course there's beautiful planters and plantings are starting to fill in, but just wanted to show that combination. And one of the things that gravel is going to get you is a very tactile sense and sound. When you're walking on gravel, you can picture in your head right now what that sounds like and what that feels like, and that's just another way to have you even subconsciously interacting with your outdoor space. A lot of people just, naturally when they hear that sound or feel that texture, it's welcoming to them, and just, is something that, a solid surface doesn't necessarily give you. And you can also have different colors and styles, depending on what color palette your home is. Whether it's brick or stone or whatever it may be, there's gravels of various shades, various sizes. A lot of the actual materials, such as bluestone, such as limestone, actually have literally, bluestone chip, limestone chip, all of these different things, so that the colors can match and you can keep the look consistent. And less dollars. So gravel, just by nature is going to be a less expensive, option than a solid patio. The construction methods are still going to be often similar. You're still going to usually want a compacted gravel base underneath it, and then that decorative gravel is going to be that finishing top layer. But it is naturally going to be a less expensive, both from a material standpoint and an install standpoint. So it's a good option there. And then as a bonus, You can check with your village if you're thinking about doing a patio or some kind of hardscape area. Some villages count gravel as pervious, or as, you know, or a like 80% pervious as far as water, allowing water to go through it, versus a solid surface that, you know, water is just going to run off. And, you know, almost every village has basically maximum square footages that you can have on your property. So sometimes if you're already up against a limit or close to a limit on your impervious surface, gravel could be a good option to still get a usable space and meet the requirements. So I wanted to mention that. And then on the next page, you know, here, you know, we talked about, you know, more modern styling, you know, very, very clean lines, bluestone steppers, bluestone chip, and a little synthetic turf panel. You know, this is more for, you know, viewing, nice ornamental pots there on a bluestone chip bed. And then these are more natural styles of gravel. So we have a dry stream here with different boulders and different, you know, rounded gravels and rounded pebbles. Some are angular and, you know, like a gravel chip. Others can be rounded like this, or a washed gravel that's nice and smooth. And then top right, you know, you can use gravel to help reinforce the design style and the design intent. You know, obviously this is a very informal, you know, almost a bistro-ish type setting, where you've got loose flagstones with loose joints, gravel in between, and then a nice informal seating area. You know, and here in this photo, you're allowing the plantings to kind of create that edge, and it's just a natural edge of the gravel going into the planting bed. A really nice look. And then, you know, something down bottom right, a project that we did where you've got a nice woodland path. And so we have a, you know, Merrimack gravel chip there to define that gravel space, but allowing plantings to, you know, go over the edge, really soften those edges, and create just a really nice look. And of course, you know, this one is enhanced with some beautiful perennial groupings along the way. So yeah, so gravel is something that can be used really in any setting, whether it be modern or informal. Excuse me. And then wanted to, of course, touch on fire pits and fireplaces. This is another thing that we're seeing a lot of requests for. These, and we'll look at some photos here, but there's options of, you know, of course, both wood burning or natural gas. So that's one of the first things you want to start to think about is, okay, are we going to be burning logs in this, or are we going to want to do it with a gas line? Do check if you're going to do a you know, permanent structure of a fire pit, whether your village requires a gas line or will allow wood burning. That's, you know, something different villages will or will not allow. So you can check on that. And portable or permanent. You can always have, you know, portable fire pits, very popular and are great for especially small spaces. And then, you know, permanent structures, where you can see these two examples I thought were really nice on the right side, because the top right is a very informal looking fire pit where we have just used Eden outcropping stones as the actual fire pit structure. And then inside that bluestone chip, there's a fire ring and that's connected to a gas line. So you can turn that on, light it, and it appears that the fire is, you know, literally coming out of the bluestone chip. Really cool look, and you know, matches the aesthetic of the surroundings as well. You know, it's a big, you know, open area, very naturalized, and so we wanted to match that style. Whereas bottom right is an outdoor fireplace. You know, obviously a, you know, big structure, beautiful stone, you know, more of a you know, permanent, you know, structure, and just goes along with, you know, the furniture setting nearby. You know, you don't see it, but a lot of the other areas and seat walls and things are made out of the same stone. And so really material wise, you can, you know, use virtually any material for these features. Often you'll try to match the house. You could even do them in stucco, you know, and have a stone coping, but the outer portion be stucco, you know, brick, stone, metal. A lot of portable metal ones are very popular nowadays, whether they be copper or iron or steel. And one of the best things about these fire pits and fireplaces is they're going to create a destination or a gathering space. You know, especially now, you know, with everyone spending so much time at home and it being the fall season as well, to have something, you know, whether it be family or, you know, a small group of friends, you know, you can socially distance and be safe, you know, it's around a fire pit. And it's something that you can, have close to, closer to your house, off a patio, or something that's set farther back that is a destination space. And even when it's not being used, something that you can look out the windows and your eye is naturally drawn towards, let's say that corner of the yard that has a nice, fire pit and a little seating area around it. So it's another, a design opportunity to do that. And then, of course, extending the outdoor season. We all, want to spend as much time as we can outdoors and extend those fall and spring seasons. We live in Chicagoland, so those nice, nice comfortable days are numbered. So anything we can do to extend those days into the fall and spring is great. And with fire, in general, obviously, safety is something that you want to consider, and zoning considerations with whatever village you live in. I already mentioned a little bit with the gas versus the log burning. Also setbacks from property lines or from other structures often are a requirement. Typically they'll need to be 10 to 15 feet away from structures. Obviously anything that's going to be a fire hazard, they're not going to want you to have that near any structures. And if you're dealing with fireplaces and things like that, there's often some regulations with just the height of the chimney, compared to other structures around it. So things to consider there. And then here's a couple different examples of fire pits. Nowadays we're seeing a lot of these linear type styles, especially in more urban or rooftop settings. And then bottom left is another one where you see it integrated with a nice wall pole pergola, composite pergola structure that we see a lot of nowadays too. And, beautiful built fire pit, nice. Of course, have the TV as well. Looks fantastic. Then this bottom right one kind of is a good example of what I was talking about, where you have that destination, even if it's, yes, a destination for gathering, but also a visual destination. So if you can imagine, if you're in this room viewing outward, you're going to look over the pool and be looking at that fire pit and at that gathering space. So that's just a nice design feature along that main axis that was, intentional. And one thing I had to mention, because this was something that was recently brought to my attention actually by a homeowner in Wilmette, top right are these smokeless, quote unquote smokeless small fire pits. I guess, it was interesting. I was told by him that the when they ordered it, I guess, the FedEx or UPS guy, whoever delivered it, said they basically had delivered already 5 on that same block of that exact thing. So, whatever reason, everyone on that block and everyone in that area has ordered some of these. But they're a nice little metal fire pit. You can put a grate that comes with it over the top here, so you can actually kind of cook over it, or do s'mores and things like that. And that grate also will help prevent embers, from flying out. So if you have, kids and things like that, it's a cool little option. So had to throw that in because that was something that was just recently brought to my attention just the other day. And a couple other examples, with fire pits, there's so many different styles. You can do round, you can do square, you can do rectangular. And then one thing I did want to mention, bottom right here, with this look, it's called board formed concrete, and I'll touch on it again a little bit later. But you can see how cool that is, where you actually can see the wood grain of the panels that were used to frame the concrete. And that's something that we're seeing more and more, even from a home and architectural standpoint, with walls and steps and things like that. And now it's also working its way into some of these other site features, such as fire pits. So wanted to mention that. And as you are out and about, maybe keep an eye out for that, because it is a really, really cool and more modern look. All right, and I see some questions popping up too, so that's awesome, and I will get to those in a little bit here. So just want to make sure to let you know I'm seeing those. So then as we go on, I wanted to talk about ornamental grasses, and then you will also talk about plant communities. Ornamental grasses are great for a lot of different reasons. They provide seasonal interest in evolution. Grasses are a perennial, so every winter, they're going to go dormant. What you see above ground is going to go dormant, but that root system is still alive and still, awake. So then come spring, they will sprout back from the ground each year. So what that creates is basically a ever, and constantly evolving look as those grasses, grow from the ground up. And then typically late season, late summer, and into fall right now, which is part of why I wanted to highlight these, is when they really put on their show. They'll get their seed plumes, they'll get their excellent fall color, and then also provide winter interest because they can be just left up for winter and provide really nice winter structure. So from a plant type standpoint, ornamental grasses are really constantly evolving. And wanted to mention the sense of movement and touch, because when it comes to, especially in the fall, on windy days, you get that movement of those grasses. And then also ornamental grasses are the type of thing that you just can't help but reach out and want to touch them. If they're close by, if you're walking down a path and there's fountain grasses or reed grasses nearby, you just naturally are going to want to reach out and touch those. And it's something that forces you to kind of literally interact with the landscape, which is a really cool thing. And there's so many different shapes and sizes. There's, pretty much a grass for every type of space. And, we live in, a natural, prairie area. So there's so many options out there of native varieties, and we'll touch on a few of those here shortly. Did want to mention, just on this first page, many of you are probably familiar with Karl Forester grasses or feather reed grasses. And a similar type in that same family that's becoming really popular nowadays is this Korean feather reed grass. So it's in the same family, it's a feather reed grass. However, this one has a much fluffier tuft of seeds up at the top, and don't think of seeds as sprouting and shedding and spreading everywhere. These are just the tufts up at the top there in the fall. But the Korean feather reed grass is becoming more popular because it just is a little bit more interesting. You can see how that looks. And you could tell probably in the background that's actually taken at Millennium Park in Chicago. So they're hardy here. It's something we've been putting more and more in our landscape designs as either kind of a substitution for that feather reed grass, or something that where we're looking for an ornamental grass in a kind of narrower spot but more vertical. So great plant material. And then bottom left, another really popular grass is the golden Hakone grass. It's non-native. It's from Asia originally. Hakonakloa is the Latin genus, but very striking, very yellow, greenish, bright chartreusey color, can handle a little bit of shade. So it's great to brighten up kind of shadier areas. Also in the fall gets really interesting kind of pinkish strands along the leaf blade. So something that's very, very popular nowadays. And then I did want to touch on a couple of different groupings of native plant types that are really popular, and we're seeing more and more of and putting more and more in our designs. One of them is drop seed. So drop seed is in the Spirabolus as the genus, native to this area, very widespread native range. The straight species is shown below. You can see it's a little mounded, forms kind of like these tufts that will spread over time, but still kind of stay in, they'll get larger, but still kind of stay in their area. Looks great with outcropping stones or anything like that kind of popping up through. And then another really popular variety that's, been just a variety that's been cultivated is Terra. So Terra is one of my favorite drop seed grasses. Looks phenomenal right now. We just did some job sites where we had Terra drop seeds planted in the last year or so, and they're just looking phenomenal. It's a little bit more upright compared to the straight species. As it starts growing, it'll be lower and green, but then gets these tufts, almost kind of like a cone, conical shape. And then as it gets into the fall, it gets this really nice copper color. Sometimes you get some reddish hues, but really great for seasonal interest. And it isn't a super dense grass. It'll get about 24 inches tall. So you can still kind of like see through the top. It's not a solid wall. So a really nice option there. But drop seeds in general, nice native grass. And blue stems. Blue stems are also native to much of the U.S. You'll see them a lot in naturalized areas or forest preserves and things like that. But there are some really, it's a type of grass or family of grasses that is starting to see more interesting varieties coming into the residential landscape. So a couple of those are Blue Heaven, and with blue stems, as you can probably see, they do have, you know, a bluish kind of silvery gray hue to them, hence the name. And then as they get into fall, often they'll have these reddish tones up at the top as they get their fall color and get a little bit more reddish green. But you can see a few different varieties here. This Smoke Signal is a newer variety. It's a little bit of a darker blue-green, and then the tops are a darker blue-purple, hence the name. Blue Heaven, this is kind of showing the fall color of the Blue Heaven variety here down below. And then the Blues is another very popular blue stem variety. Doesn't get too large. You're going to be looking at like, you know, 2 to 3 feet tall as it progresses through the season there. Get some really nice interest. Very tough too. That's one thing I want to mention with a lot of these grasses are, you know, they're very tough and very durable. A lot of blue stems you'll see sometimes even in parkways and medians. So that means they're dealing with, you know, salt spray, just, you know, pollution, you know, just bad soil, a lot of really tough conditions that other plants wouldn't be able to handle, but grasses can. And sedges. Sedges are getting increasingly popular. I'd expect to see these more and more in the coming years. In 2021, Carex is the genus for most of these. There are several different native types. Sedges is a very large family of plants, but I wanted to highlight a few that we see most often lately. Oak sedge, bottom here. This is a sedge that is naturally a woodland ground cover sedge, so can handle some shade, will get established and spread nicely and create this kind of nice, you know, beautiful moundy green carpet with a lot of texture. We're using that more and more in landscape designs and residential settings, as just in place of a Pachysandra or a euonymus or some kind of, it's a, you know, interesting approach for a ground cover. With sedges, there's a lot of different colors too. Chartreuse, bright yellow green, dark green, blues. So I wanted to show this Blue Zinger is a nice compact bluish green sedge that is, you know, nice and tough. And then Appalachian sedge is another one, bottom right. So in general, sedges are going to be smaller in stature and more mounded and spreading. But there really is a sedge for every environment. There's such a large family of plants that, you know, whether you have even a wetland area or a woodland area or kind of a dry prairie area, there's a sedge that will do well in virtually every environment. So if this is something that you're interested in, you can do a little digging and find the right sedge for the spot that you're looking at. Then switchgrasses. I love switchgrasses. I love them. They're fantastic. They are taller and bulkier. They're, you know, pretty solid plant material from an ornamental grass standpoint. A lot of native types, and I wanted to highlight 3 of kind of the most popular varieties. So Northwind, the bottom here is one of the most common types. One of the great things about Northwind is it is such a tough and durable plant. It can handle really wet sites, you know, sites that are going to be underwater for a day and a half, you know, or kind of flood prone areas, can handle a little bit of shade, can handle plenty of sun, and you can see what it looks like, you know, later in the season. Really nice vertical looking. It's got a little bit of a larger blade than some of the other ornamental grasses, and it's got these beautiful seed plumes up top, you know, a little dainty. You kind of see through them, but up close, they're really interesting. And then Heavy Metal is another type, top right. You can see it's more of a bluish green, bluish silver hue to it. And then the seed tufts up top create a really nice color contrast. They're going to be kind of almost have a little pinkish tan hue to them. So that's another one that's a popular variety. And then Shenandoah, very popular. It's going to be a little bit smaller in stature, about 3 to 4 feet tall. But you can see later in the season gets these really nice red and crimson, this coloration to it. So switchgrasses are great. A little bit larger, but a nice ornamental grass option. And then wanted to touch on plant communities. And these are things that, wanted to tie it into the ornamental grasses, because lots of times with native plant communities, you're going to have an element that is ornamental grasses. So the whole idea behind plant communities is pairing plant material that, in their natural environment would be interacting together or would show up together via Mother Nature. So, even just a couple examples here, showing a, type. So, and then from a design standpoint, I should say, this is a really cool strategy to create different textures and a different seasonal evolution and interest, and also, pairing colors together and bloom time. So there's a lot of opportunity there, not only from a environmental standpoint, but also from a design standpoint. So bottom right, this is, I believe, some drop seed grass with, pockets of salvia popping up and in between. And you can see how, beautiful that is with that color contrast and the more vertical blooms of the salvia versus the soft chartreusey nature of the drop seed grasses. Then on the right side, we've got, nice companion plants with coneflowers, echinacea, Russian sage. And even with the coneflowers, there's two different types of coneflowers here. We've got one of the flat cap types, possibly, Kim's knee high or something like that, or pixie metabrite. But then the native type, the Echinacea purpurea, that has the the kind of almost the droopy flowers to them. But those are the native type that you would see in Illinois prairies and Midwestern prairies. And those are taller, so they're going to kind of pop up through that design. And then more of a woodland feel down here. So we've got the lower, sedges, some liatris, some woodland native perennials. So plant communities in general, trying to design, something that's environmentally friendly, companion plants that would work together in their natural environment, but also have, utilizing them for this nice, interest and color, approach or texture approach. And I did want to mention this book, in case any of you were looking into, this more, wanting to learn more about it. This book by Thomas Rainer and Claudia West is Planting in a Post-Wild World. Is kind of like the Bible as far as recently with this whole approach of plant communities and designing resilient landscapes. And the intent with a lot of these plant communities is to, whether it be initially a seed mix or planting plugs or 1 gallon perennials, is plant it and kind of get out of the way. There might be a little bit of maintenance the first year or two just to keep weeds and things out if you're starting from scratch, but let the plants do their thing and, let nature take its course. And you'll see plants, moving and popping up in different areas, and you'll see a different evolution of that space from year to year. And the whole intent is to let that happen. And you can see even just with this axonometric view here, showing the different layers of an approach to a planting community design, with your structural layer of trees and larger perennials, some Joe Pye weed and a tree there. Then you get your mid layer, your seasonal theme that's going to alter with different bloom times of perennials, and then a ground cover layer, something that's really going to fill in that in between the perennials, and those are where you have your native sedges or little grasses, and those are going to keep out the invasive weeds. And then you can also incorporate spring bulbs and things like that into these to really create a space that is constantly changing. And so just a couple other photos of things along this approach. The top left, we got beautiful black-eyed Susans and liatris shooting up through it. Of course, companion colors. You're thinking of the color wheel. You've got your purples and yellows there. So that's for late season color. And then even down left, you've got basically a bog or a wetland scenario where you've got bog iris, hostas, which can handle a lot of water. Looks like butterfly weed there in the back, the orange butterfly weed. So things like that with planting communities around a wetland area. And then over to the left, this is something that you could have even along a narrow stretch of a walkway, and you're even in a small residential setting. You've got, you could have a native seed mix, let it all pop up, and just, you can see a little monarch butterfly there. and see how it changes over the course of each year. And then even, I just wanted to throw a couple pictures on here. This is a restored wetland near where I live in Chicago, right near Foster and Pulaski. This was a restored wetland that has been planted in this approach, and it's just amazing to see the seasonal evolution from spring to late spring to summer to fall. There's always something new popping up. These were taken later in the summer. As you can see, the native bee balm and monarda. There's butterfly weed here with some monarch caterpillars, and so that's kind of the general approach. And you can do this in even small areas of your property. All right, so now just wanted to throw in a few kind of odds and ends here at the end, things I thought that were worth mentioning that we're seeing more and more of that are really trendy and probably see more of in the next year or two. Bottom left, seeing a lot of these kind of stone orbs or just circles of different sizes. They can be utilized integrated with plantings, or more of almost like almost an art type piece, and then around those was kind of the perfect photo because those bluish pebbles are called Mexican pebbles, and they're extremely popular. So you can use them for a lot of different purposes. They go well with utilizing them near bluestone or dry streams and things like that, but a really nice, just eye-catching feature that can be integrated in a lot of ways are those Mexican pebbles. And then in the ways of fencing, seeing more and more of this horizontal fencing. We always, lots of times picture, vertical, panels for fencing, but from an architectural standpoint, fencing is being utilized more and more as an architectural feature. And therefore we're seeing with this, a lot of more modern and contemporary looks, seeing horizontal banding in fencing versus the traditional, vertical slats. So that's a really nice option. Just, creates a really nice horizontal look there. And then, as I mentioned before, with the fire pit, with that one photo, board formed concrete. So that this is a really cool, just new, it's not necessarily new in itself. Board form has been around for years, but it's becoming more and more popular and trendy. And you can see this photo bottom right of how much you can actually see the wood grain in the texture, but then also the actual texture of some of that concrete bead that kind of seeps through the boards and kind of creates that interesting texture. And then when the concrete contractor is doing the framing, they can even have them slightly offset from each other to create kind of this like cool 3D patchwork. So something that is very interesting, and it's been exciting to see that kind of become more and more prevalent on the market, and being able to kind of integrate that into some of our designs. And then wanted to touch on synthetic turf. That technology has come a long way in the last 5 years or so. Synthetic turf used to be just that almost like AstroTurf, and super hard. It got really hot. Just was not great, but that has come a long way. Nowadays they have so many different blends where you can have a type that looks like a fescue, that looks like a bluegrass blend, Kentucky bluegrass blend like sodwood, even bent grass, like a putting green or even a rough. So there's so many different types out there. You can see on the photo on the left, they've got the typical green blade, but then down below that thatch layer, which is just like a normal lawn would be, you've got the blades of grass and then that thatch layer. They're much softer, much cooler than things used to be. So interesting option, and that technology has come a long way. And then of course vegetable gardening. It's still super popular. We still consistently get clients wanting to have areas of their property designated for vegetable gardening. It's a great opportunity to get the kids involved, learn about the outdoors and about Mother Nature and the cycles of food and all of that. So definitely wanted to at least touch on that. Still very popular. And then Another interesting development in the way of kind of along those lines, we talked about horizontal fencing, is these laser cut privacy panels. It's something that is, really, really cool. Seeing a lot of that growing in the industry. All kinds of different patterns, different levels of opacity. Some you can see through, many much more than others, more privacy. But something that's really cool. Some of them are semi-permanent. This one, of course, is mounted on a rooftop deck type setting. But there's panels that I know we have that you can purchase, great for like air conditioning screening or screening utilities, and you can just anchor them down into the ground. Even just a 4-foot panel that's maybe 5-6 feet tall or 4x4. They're different sizes, but a lot of cool options there with those privacy panels. And then wanted to finish things up, just mentioning a couple of important considerations, especially with some of these more permanent structures and things that are going to take some planning and some design thought, is always start planning ahead. So now we're going into fall season, winter's kind of slowing down, but that's the perfect time to be reaching out if this is something that you're thinking about tackling for 2021, to get the planning phase done now, and the budgeting, and all that, and some of those things, like I mentioned, looking into the zoning or restrictions. Now is the best time to do that. You're going to be first in line come spring. All the there's no surprises. All that has been researched and kind of thought out, and you're ready to go come 2021. Versus starting it in the spring when everyone else is also having the same thought. So planning ahead with this stuff is always a recommendation. And like I mentioned, just look into some of these things, even if it's just a quick call to your community development department or building or zoning department on some of these things, just to ask about restrictions or setbacks, so that at least a little bit of what you're getting into, or what the requirements are, and what you are or aren't. Unfortunately, sometimes you can't do some of this stuff, or you need to know the right spot to do it. So that's always important. And then proper location and siting with these things is always important to maximize the experience provided by them, whether it be plant material or some of these ornamental grasses, or an actual site feature like a fire pit or fireplace. You're going to want to pick the right spot for it, and professionals can help you to do that, and hopefully come up with a few ideas that maybe you hadn't thought about, or talk to you about some of the pros and cons of siting it over here versus over here, to help you kind of make those decisions and just make recommendations for you. So, and with a lot of this, hiring a professional and hiring knowledgeable people, either designers or contractors and things like that, is gonna serve you best. It's always kind of the whole you get what you pay for kind of thing. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to take a few moments here and answer some questions, and feel free to continue to ask some questions. So first off, does Chalet have a heat bistro table? I apologize, I do not know right this moment what we have in inventory outside, but I would, of course, welcome you to come on out. Thankfully, a lot of our stock and materials are outdoors as well, but even inside, we're practicing safety, social distancing and all that. So feel free to come and check out the current inventory with some of these things that we're showing today. Then Carol was asking about the bistro lighting. Sorry, I'm going to stop my screen share here. That way you can see myself. So Carol, with bistro lighting, do we have any worry about the weather, the rain and the snow? Actually, I'm going to share my screen again because I'm super blurry. With the bistro lighting, typically we haven't seen any issues. Some people, one of the nice things about them is they are very easy to unmount. So if you do want to play it safe and take them down for the winter, I think that would be recommended, just to play it safe. But that is easy to do, and they can be stored in a bin or whatever, in a corner of a garage, and then just put back up in the spring. Rain is definitely not an issue. They're designed to be sealed, and weatherproof, and rain proof, so no issues there. But bringing them in for the winter is probably recommended. And then Rowena asked, how do you prevent weeds from growing in the gravel? Great question. So as I think I maybe just mentioned briefly, but a typical gravel, if it's a walkway or a patio space, is going to have a compacted gravel base underneath it, usually 4 to 6 inches, depending on the type of use of the space. And that really is going to be a solid base. So that's not, there's no soil there. There's not, and most plants and things like that aren't going to be able to root down into that. So typically we'll have the gravel base, then a thin layer of almost whatever the top portion is. Let's say it's going to be bluestone chip. We'll use what's called bluestone fines as a layer between the compacted gravel, the dust, bluestone fines, and then an inch, max 2 inches of that bluestone chip. And those 3 things combined really don't create a good growing environment for plants at all. So if somehow you do get a little something, popping up, it would be super easy to just, take it out or just, by hand. So we don't see that being a big issue as long as it's constructed correctly. If you are just throwing, a couple inches of gravel on an area without, landscape fabric and that gravel base, then yeah, you're going to get weeds growing in through that. So you're going to want to, if you construct it right, it shouldn't be a big issue. Okay, so then Donna asked, Bistro types of lights, any solar powered options? Solar technology, has been around for a while in the landscape. I'm sure you've seen, pathway lights and things like that. It's still a technology that isn't quite there as far as being something that we would really recommend for an outdoor space that is, that consistently performs. Hopefully that technology does get there, and I'm sure it will at some point. The things, the issues you're going to run into is, it is obviously going to need sun. So if you're in any kind of shady area, that could be an issue. It also is, you're dependent on times of year. If it's getting dark early on in the late fall and winter, those lights are going to turn on a lot earlier and then, not perform as long. And just in general, solar powered lights aren't quite there yet where you can have, several hours of lighting, reliably. So I haven't seen, at least me personally, with Bistro lights, a solar option, but I just know in general, even with other types of lights, the technology is not quite there, but hopefully will be soon. And then Ed asked, can pink muhly grass grow in our zone? I'd have to look at that particular type. I know, with our zones kind of, changing and us getting into warmer zones, that is opening up more opportunities for grasses or even other plant material types that were, borderline, zone 6, or just very borderline hardy around here, that now we are able to use more, for better or for worse, able to use more reliably in the landscape. So anything that is zone 6 or higher is still very marginal, but we are definitely solidly in zone 5A, B in this area now, and we will see what the future holds with all of that. Then will we be able to see this class again on YouTube? Absolutely. So this webinar will be located on our YouTube channel. I don't know, probably in the next day or two is usually when those get uploaded to YouTube. So feel free to revisit this at any point in time. Ground is too hard to till. So Judith asked, so I'm guessing it's probably either an area that was, recently constructed and is very compacted, or is a lot of clay and heavy clay, because when clay soils dry out, they get really, really hard. So it's hard to know without knowing exactly what is going on there. But if you're going to till, I would recommend trying to do it, time it right so that it's a time when the ground is a little moist and hopefully a little bit more pliable and easier to work with. And a lot of times that's something that will just improve over time as it's tilled a couple of times and starts to loosen up, especially in areas of new construction and things like that, where new developments have been done. You've had heavy equipment going over these areas, and have really compacted the soil, and it takes time for that to loosen up. Hopefully, kind of tilling it as best as you can, and timing it when the ground is a little bit more pliable over time will help with that. Oh, sorry. No, I just saw this. So, want to plant a grass or hossa, but the ground is like concrete. Yeah. Okay. So I would, just wait, until either soon after a rain or something where the ground is hopefully a little softer. If you can, then get a rototiller in there to really try to loosen things up, and then you get your plantings in there. Hopefully that will help, and hopefully that answers some of your question. All right, let's see here. All right, I'm gonna check the chat here too. So Julie asked, design ideas for a strip or run for dogs with a drainage concept. So that's a great question. And that is something that we definitely get customers requesting. If they have dogs and let's say they're going to do a dog run on a narrow side of their house or something like that. A couple of options that we talked about. You could do a gravel area, like a washed gravel is what I'd recommend, something that's not too angular and sharp for the dog's paws. So you could do washed gravel there. You would want to have some permeable landscape fabric underneath that to stop weeds coming up. So that would help. And then underneath that, you can have drainage piping, carrying, as rainwater then comes down, kind of cleans things out and flushes out, any waste products and things like that. You're going to also just need to be kind of mindful of where that's, draining to. Another option of some areas that we've done is synthetic turf. And that's one of the biggest uses for synthetic turf in that whole market is for dog runs and dog parks and things like that. And they actually have specific blends and types that are made and designed for that use. And they also have specific products. I'm going to, of course, forget the name of it, but it's a type of stone or powder that is ground up and is swept into the synthetic turf, but also is in the base underneath. Because when you're dealing with dogs and waste and things like that, especially over time, can get really smelly, and just not very desirable. But I think it starts with a Z or an X. But this dust, our byproduct, helps neutralize the scent and the odors and things like that. So that's another good option, is synthetic turf for an area like that. Also, is easy for cleanup and and things like that and pick up. Are there many new hydrangeas for 2021? I'm sure there are. So the hydrangeas have seen, just every year more new and new varieties coming out. I know a couple of the newer ones. There, some Bloomstruck, Zinfandel, Little Quick Fires, things like that. There's a lot to choose from. Twist and Shout. Many types. So I'm sure there are new hydrangeas coming out in 2021. If you keep an eye out for some of the, what I'm looking at, some of the providers or suppliers like Proven Winners or Monrovia, things like that, they'll often be announcing their next product lines. And that's something a lot of times we see over the winter too at things like trade shows or conferences. So keep an eye out for that, but I'm sure there will be newer varieties coming out for hydrangeas in 2021, both in the larger shrub forms and the paniculatas, and also even the smaller, mid-size macrophyllus and even some of the smaller paniculatas. That is one thing that I should mention, is in the paniculatas. In the past, they've been much larger, 5 to 6 foot types like Tardivas, Pinky Winkies, some of these larger shrubs. But there's been a lot of growth in the smaller paniculata types like Bobo hydrangeas, Little Quick Fires, things along that nature. So probably more to come on that. And Sandra asked, do pavers work for dog runs? Sure, pavers can absolutely work. That's not a problem. Again, makes for easy pickup and cleanup. It's that's definitely an option, especially if you have a shady or wet area where it's hard to grow grass or hard to get anything to really grow. And dogs, of course, by nature, will sometimes beat those areas up and make it hard to grow grass anyway. So you could do pavers for an option there. And an interesting approach, or something that would be nice for an option like that, is to do permeable pavers, where there's a space in the joint of each paver and like gravel chip in between, and that'll allow both rainwater and waste and things like that to just percolate down through those pavers and down into the base. Then Pam asked, what's a good alternative to burning bush for a corner of a house, southeast exposure? There's a lot of options. You could do something that's more flowering, like some of these hydrangeas we were just talking about. Lilacs are a good option. If you're thinking about something in the similar size, you could do Miss Kim lilacs or dwarf Korean lilacs, or some of the shrub type hydrangeas. There's a lot of options in the viburnum family as well. Judd viburnums are really nice, beautiful bloom and fragrance and good fall color. Forsythias, if you like early spring and bright yellow blooms. So if you're looking for a substitution for burning bush, there's a lot of nice options there. And burning bushes too, it's hard to know exactly. Some of the older burning bushes could be 15 feet tall versus the more compact types, 4 to 6 foot. But even with those varying sizes, there's a lot of different options. Dogwoods are another family where there's some nice dogwood options that would fit kind of that niche of an anchor shrub on the corner. So hopefully that helps. It looks like we might have a couple more questions. All right, so Arthur asked, have you seen good outdoor movie screens incorporated into good design? Sure, so that's another option versus a mounted TV screen. You could have an outdoor movie screen, or something that's pulled down for I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought as far as a projector. There it is, projection screen. Those are something, especially if you have a structure like a pergola or something like that, or even an overhang on a home, that you could have a projection screen mounted down. The other thing is, you don't even always need a projection screen. If you have a nice wall that could be projected onto, that's an option. I know, been at some people's homes where they have a projector mounted, or it's even just brought out on a table whenever they want to use it outdoors, and they'll project a movie out onto the side of the garage or on a blank wall. So plenty of options there. And if you're looking to have it be something that's not too visually obtrusive or not there all the time, like a mounted TV would be, then that would be a good option. I thought about showing a picture as well of, basically there's outdoor TV cabinets nowadays, where the TVs are so thin, they can actually be slide down into a thin cabinet that can be like up against a wall or set over to the side, and then you can, with the remote, turn the power on, and the screen will actually come out from within the cabinet. So that's another interesting option you could look into. And then so Arthur also asked, is there a more durable design for flagstone? I love the look, but does it perform well in winter? Sure. So we do flagstone or stone patios and walkways all the time. With any patio or walkway, whether it's concrete or patio or stone or brick, your strength and durability is going to be in that base, the part that you don't see. That's where your structural strength is going to be. So if you see a patio or a walkway or something like that that is failing or isn't lasting long or moving a lot in this, this lovely freeze thaw vicious cycle that we always have here in Chicago, it's probably because the base itself is either failing or just wasn't constructed correctly, or not enough of a base to begin with. So that's why, like I mentioned, you really want to talk to professionals and good contractors and builders who will do it right, because that really is money that's wasted. If you're spending thousands of dollars on a patio, a flagstone patio that isn't constructed correctly, it will fail, and you're going to have to hire then someone to come in and fix it, and redo it all over again. So you want to, spend the money and get the professionals to come in and do it right the first time, and save you those headaches. But in general, flagstone and bluestone, any of those stones should perform just fine in the winter. If you have kind of wetter, low-lying areas, you can get some issues with standing water or just moisture, and sometimes that in the freeze thaw causing some issues with the material itself. So keep that in mind. But nowadays, what we're seeing more and more, and one of the trends I thought about mentioning as well, is permeable base, as well as using gravel chip as the base instead of a compacted, really tight gravel chip, is using 3/4 inch gravel chip and then a 3/8 inch chip, which still provides all the structural stability, but actually allows water to go down through the base and down into the subsoil, versus moisture and water being stuck there in a sand layer or a compacted gravel layer with fines and kind of that dust that can just hold moisture. So especially if you're in a lower area where that water could be kind of collecting or staying, you definitely want to consider a permeable base there to help prevent that, because keeping that surface stone as dry as possible is what you would want. So I hope that answers your question. All right, let's see. All right, we've got a couple more questions here. So from Pam, so if you're going to replace an older bush, is it better to remove plants in the fall and replace in spring versus remove and replant at the same time? Either way. So if you were to do that now and remove the plants and get a new one in there, as long as it's a hardy shrub, which I fully expect it would be, there should be no issues there. Fall is a great time to do planting. I always tell people, as long as it's a durable plant, especially a shrub is going to be durable, you can plant those all the way up through the ground, basically freezing. And one of the nice things about that is, let's say you're planting now, they still have not a ton of growing time, quote unquote, but the plant can get in there, start to get established slightly. Then winter comes, it goes to sleep and goes dormant, and then comes spring, it's already in the ground and ready to hit the ground running. So as temperatures warm up, that plant is waking up in its new spot and just ready to go. So you can absolutely still plant that replacement shrub now, or if you for whatever reason don't want to, that's fine too. You can remove it now and plant in that same spot early in the spring. Whenever you're doing removals of either a large shrub or a tree, the most important thing is really trying to get as much of that existing root system and trunk out of the ground, because if that is still there, especially if it's a tree, if you don't get enough of that out, as it decomposes and things, you can start to get the new plant kind of settling oddly, or you can just run into some issues there, or just having it not do well if there's a trunk or some kind of other structure from the previous plant material down underneath it still. All right, well, it looks like that is all the questions, I believe. So thanks again so much for joining us today. This was great, lots of fun. Hopefully you can integrate some of these upcoming or current design trends in your outdoor landscape. And again, my name is Eric Braun, and thank you so much for your time, and have a great day. It's looking like a nice couple of days, and we don't have too many of those left, so enjoy. Bye.